How much money do you want to make as a startup founder? In this video, we're going to discuss the three business models that you can be building and explaining why business models matter when it comes to you and your investors and why you need to be thinking about them ahead of time because a lot of founders miss this step. All the founders that I see coming to startups.com, working with us, trying to build their dreams, very few have considered the implications of the business model. And this is going to be part of the CFXO series, Chief Funding Execution Officer, which you can download in the description or in the comments and get all the information and catch up. Before we continue, my name is Ed Kang. If we met before, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. As usual, use the chapter markers to skip ahead to the good part of the video, trying to make your life as easy as possible. You are welcome. If we haven't met, I'm a 7-time funded founder with 2 exits, and that's just a fancy way of saying I failed a bunch of times to your benefit because I use YouTube videos like this and my channel to help founders, especially early stage founders, avoid some of the catastrophic mistakes that I've made in my day. It's not to say you're not going to make mistakes, but I'm going to try to make your life a little bit easier because it's hard enough as it is. I'm also the Chief Strategy Officer for startups.com. If you haven't checked this out yet, head on over to the website. A lot of free resources there. If you're already part of startups.com, thank you so much for joining us. Your support is tremendously appreciated. While everyone's here, do the YouTube thing, like, comment, subscribe, always helpful. Let's jump into business model fit, why it matters, and how you can approach it. Here is the CFXO canvas, and up top, you can see all the fits that you need to have, and there's an assessment that you can download. Just go right in the comments or the descriptions, but we are right here at business model fit, which is going to impact how you scale later on, which impacts what the investors are going to think, but also your quality of life, lifestyle, whatever you're trying to seek. These are the things that you have to consider before you get into the rest of this, especially if you're going to go get investors. You have to consider business model fit. I can't stress it enough because so many founders end up at the end of the line and they regret the decisions they made because they haven't set the foundation required for them to scale into what they really wanted. There's this common expression for people who are working in companies saying that if you climb the corporate ladder, you might end up realizing it's leaning against the wrong wall. I had one of my first early angel investors explain this to me as well and said, Ed, you have to be really careful and think with the end in mind first. Now, he was already much further along and had done successful businesses with exits and was able to invest in my business. And I was young back then, and I didn't really understand until I had those multiple failures. Yes, I've had certain successes along the way, but the failures could have been avoided somewhat. There were other factors involved if I just would have thought through what my business model is. Now, a lot of founders say to me, well, Ed, I'm just going to put the idea out there and I'm going to see where it takes me. But I think that's not a very productive or even wise way of approaching it because a lot of the things that you do in the beginning are determined by how you see yourself ending. If you're learning how to be a CFXO for your startup, you understand that you must execute to get the funding. Many founders take this for granted. Your startup is nothing but an idea wrapped in a set of assumptions and then wrapped in a business model. And it's that business model that determines whether investors want to invest in you because as you do business, you're going to be making money, going towards profitability, and profitability is what an investor needs. For later on, maybe you want to exit or sell the company. Your business model will determine what steps you're able to do. So many founders think it's just the idea that makes them money, but literally that is an assumption. You're assuming that you're going to make money in a specific way. It's the investor that wants to know the business model, and that's why in your pitch deck, there's a how it works and how you make money slide, your business model slide. This is super important for that investor in the early stages as well as the end game. What is your exit strategy so that the investor can make money? Furthermore, you may not want an investor, and this is going to become even more important because this is what you're going to be living on. So important to consider this, and I'm going to walk you through the 3 business models that you should consider. After listening to so many other successful founders and doing research on what actually makes money in the marketplace, what creates a successful entrepreneur, let alone a startup founder, I've come to learn of 3 business models. There's the lifestyle startup, the asset startup, and then the unicorn startup, which is what most founders are familiar with. You might have heard of a lifestyle startup in the past, but most likely you haven't heard of the asset startup unless you're very familiar with business or you understand how private equity works. And this is what so many founders don't quite understand, that you might actually be building an asset startup and that's what you want, but you're clumping it into either lifestyle startup or the unicorn startup. Each of these has a different level of money that you're going to be working with. Now, it's not linear. Don't look at this and say it's $1, $2, or $3. It's an order of magnitude. So it's 10x, 100x, and 1000x. These are the differences. Now, before we get into those differences, for a lifestyle startup, you're going to want to target making $1 to $2 million. For the asset startup, roughly $5 to $10 million. There are many exceptions to this, but this is what I've seen in the past talking to other entrepreneurs. And then unicorn is the almighty $100 million for 10x valuation to give you that $1 billion pre-IPO or pre-exit valuation. I'm going to be ignoring the decacorns and the centacorns out there, although they are more possible now than ever because of AI. I'm going to be ignoring them because it's difficult enough as it is. So let's keep it within realistic expectations for the regular founder. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that every founder has a better than 0% chance to go and build a unicorn. Maybe unicorn in a rocket ship ready to go to the moon, and you might be one of those founders. And every founder has a better than 0% chance of raising funding for said unicorn. But the truth is, not every founder wants to build a unicorn. I use the term unicorn, YO unicorn, versus the traditional $100 million, $1 billion valuation unicorn. You may want to build a unicorn that's right for you, which could be a lifestyle startup, which I totally confess, these are the startups that I'm trying to build these days. Because I'm on the back nine of my career and I've tried to build unicorns and I failed. I came close, but I failed. And many investors lost money. In fact, the truth is, and I'll always be transparent with you, I've lost more money for investors than I've made money. Now, the investors that have made money, they're really happy with me, but that's the game of startups. The asymmetric upside is so huge, but the failure rate is massive. And the startups that do survive and get funded, only 1 or 2, 3% of them will actually achieve that mythical unicorn status, and you have to be aware, and that's why we need to talk about these 3 business models. In a lifestyle startup, you are going to have less than 12 employees. 12 is one of these weird numbers in companies that as soon as you reach employee 13, things break down. You have to get HR department, you have to have your policies in place, and weird things happen amongst the employees. They go off and they splinter into their own little subcultures. You have issues hiring. It doesn't feel like a family anymore. And not every founder is prepared to manage a company to the level where you go past 12 employees because systems start to break. And many founders think to themselves, why did I sign up for this? I didn't sign up for this. I want to keep everything tight. I want to think big but act small. And that's why you're going to be in the 1 to 2 million range. If you make $2 million a year in your startup, that's the total revenue, and you're the one running it, you can live a pretty easy life and pay all your staff really well and do your thing. In an asset startup, you're going to have more than 12 employees. That means you need to have the organizational structures, such as a chief of staff or an HR department that's going to be handling things like payroll, handling things like onboarding, policies, procedures, discipline, you name it, constantly looking and recruiting. Because if you're going to grow $5 to $10 million, as you see, you're going to have to bulk up on staff. You're going to need more infrastructure. Which brings us to the unicorn. You're going to need a full org chart. And I put a star there because we're talking these days about 10 people building a $10 billion unicorn with AI. Has it happened? Absolutely not. But you're seeing unicorns being built with 30 people, with 60 people, whereas before you needed like 3,000 people. It's the wild, wild west. But you need that org chart. You absolutely need to have everything organized. The boxes, whether there's an AI fulfilling that box or not, the amount of effort and understanding in terms of organizational structure that you require is orders of magnitude more than a lifestyle startup. Furthermore, you might be a $10 million a year company and you can't get to unicorn status either because of your market, but a lot of times because of internal constraints. Some companies realize to grow past $10 million to $100 million, they have to go back into founder mode. They have to act like a startup when usually bureaucracies or rigid structures have started to settle in. And that's a headache not every founder is ready to encounter, which is evidenced by so many founders being replaced by their board once major funding comes in, once there's an exit, or let's say you get into your BC round, a founder taps out, or the initial founding team, those co-founders, and people are brought in who are experienced scaling companies where a founder might just be really good at going from 0 to 1. I know many founders like that. I'm one of these founders, and you need that additional help, so that full org chart has to come into play. And this is something that you have to think about. Am I ready to play this game? Therefore, in a lifestyle startup, you don't need a CEO. In fact, you're going to have freedom, which we're going to talk about, where you can just hire a manager and things can run, especially if you're one of these really easy, more passive business models that just generate 1 or 2 million a year. There are many micropreneurs or micro SaaS founders that have reached this level. You don't need a CEO. In an asset startup, guess who's a CEO? Most likely you. If you're not the CEO, you're probably not going to be able to generate enough salary. All the money needs to go into the business to grow it for a sale. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll find a really good team, but most likely you'll be involved in high-level executive decisions at least. If not, you're going to be the chairman of the board if you get to that $10 million range and you kind of kick back. But once again, it's important that you're doing everything you can to prepare your startup for that eventual sale. Finally, with a unicorn, you need the full C-suite. And I'm not talking about the funny acronyms. I'm talking about the mainstays. You need to have the chief executive officer, the COO, chief operations officer, CFO, chief financial officer. Those are kind of like your big three. You might have a CMO, a chief people officer, who knows? But you have to figure that out. And whether you sub that out to AI or not, I'm not going to be making that determination right now. We got a lot of years ahead of us to figure it out, but you need that full C-suite. And if you don't have a full C-suite, you're not going to be able to manage the employees because every C leader has their VPs or the managers of the departments, and all the managers have people that report to them, all their individual teams, direct reports. You'll have middle management. It becomes a huge headache, something that I'm not really good at managing day to day. I'm more of a grower or a starter than I am a maintainer. And many CEOs understand the management system. Just turn the crank, make the sausage, and work the C-suite. And those are great CEOs. God love you all if you are built for that. I'm just not. And the whole point of each is freedom for the lifestyle startup. You are going to be bringing on people and building your model so you can work on the beach. You can work while traveling, work while you're with your family, work remote. I work out of my bedroom right here. Behind this whiteboard is my bed because I don't have enough space for an actual office because my wife has her own space and my kids have their bedrooms and they want their own office spaces to play video games. And we have an open house layout, so I can't be sitting in the open space recording these videos without distracting everyone. So I'm relegated to a corner and a virtual set like this. And it works fine for me because it suits my lifestyle because I don't want to commute to an office every single day. For the asset startup, you're looking for stability. If you are growing 10 to 15% year over year and you are stable, you can weather the storms of competition, of market trends. You're resilient. And you can show that track record, which is why banks, for anything in terms of a personal loan, want to see 2 years of your income statements, but they also want to see 5 years for business. They want to see that you made it past that really tough 5-year mark and how you're growing. If you can continue doing that and you've shown that you can weather everything out there, all what they call the VUCA environment, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, well, then you will have an asset that other people will want to buy because people would rather buy into stability than something that's risky. It just makes a lot of sense. Unless, of course, you're a unicorn investor and you're all about hyper growth. Unicorns have to grow not 10 to 15% year over year. We're talking 10% week over week. That's the type of growth. And again, not every founder is suited for this. So many founders get slapped in the face by investors. I see it every day. At startups.com, we are sending out hundreds of emails every day to investors, working with founders. Founders are using our investor match tool. You can go check it out at startups.com to match with investors and reach out to them. And we see the responses, and those go into our AI, and that gets trained. And we see investors say, love the idea. We think it's great. You're a great founder, but you're not growing fast enough to actually meet our requirements for our fund. Or investors will flat out say, this is just not a 100x unicorn opportunity. There's no billion-dollar TAM attached to this. And many founders are aghast and they feel rejection. But what they're doing is they're pitching a lifestyle startup or an asset startup to the investor, and that investor is looking for a unicorn. And that's why it's important to get this all figured out right in the beginning. Because if you are looking for funding, especially early stage, pre-seed funding, if you want to talk to an investor or an angel that wants to see their portfolio 50, 100, 200x, then you have to understand what your business model must look like to get to that unicorn status, but there's always a mismatch. If you're building an asset startup that's going to be for sale, then you only need to talk to a specific type of investor that's not a unicorn investor. I've sat for coffee with founders that have had to go back to their unicorn investors and say, we're not going to get to that $100 million revenue. Are you okay with 2 to 3x return on your investment? And the reality is, so many investors who run funds, have LPs, they are not okay with 2, 3, 5x return. But that's a subclass of investors in private equity, in venture capital, which is an alternative asset class, and they have to deliver those types of returns. One startup has to make up for the rest of the entire fund. So if the $50 million fund has deployed all that capital, that one startup that does go unicorn has to do 100, 200, 300x to make enough returns for the LPs to be satisfied and the GPs to go out and raise another fund on the backs of that previous success. I can't stress more. Understanding what business model not only fits the investor, but fits you as a founder is paramount to your long-term success, but also your long-term sense of fulfillment and things like mental health, physical health, everything involved in all the other aspects of your life outside of your startup. Let me make this black and white for you. In a lifestyle startup, you do not raise money for a lifestyle startup if that's what you're trying to do. For an asset startup, you are recommended to seed strap. Raise once so you never have to raise again. Get your unit economics in order and raise enough money so you can get to profitability, and then you'll just be fine. You won't have your cap table junked up. So when you get to $10 million in revenue, so many founders end up selling and they don't make any money because they've got all these investor obligations. Keep the cap table lean and mean, the minimum amount of investors possible, and you'll just be fine when you sell that as an asset. Unicorn, VC. That's standard, straightforward. Most of you are probably familiar with this route. If not, let me know. More than happy to educate you on what it's like to raise VC money. There's no raise for the lifestyle startup. That means there's no exit. You cannot sell a lifestyle startup because of something called key man risk. Most likely it's built upon you, your personality, your brand, and when you go away, the startup's going to go away. Some are able to transition from the lifestyle to an asset startup by divesting themselves, but it's extremely difficult, and most likely you're better off just making enough money as possible, squirreling it away, getting other investments going so you can ride off into the sunset. For the asset startup, you're going to sell. Let's say you make it to $10 million in revenue. It's not uncommon for a private equity company to come in and offer you a 2.5 to 5x multiplier on your top line revenue so that they can put you in their portfolio. Remember, private equity is different than venture capital. Venture capital is a subset of private equity. Private equity, they're interested in building portfolios of annuity-based businesses. Businesses that cash flow, that put out profit every single year, not one massive glorious exit, which is what's called a liquidity event for the unicorn. The exit creates liquidity for the initial investors, either out in the public markets where they can sell their stock or shares, or there's a huge buyout. Someone buys you for $1 billion using their stock. Just right now, I saw the NFL Network, I'm a big fan of football, sell to ESPN for 10% of ESPN stock. That's called a liquidity event. At unicorn level numbers, rarely is it all cash deals because all these companies need to sit on stockpiles of cash, but you can get bought out, buy stock, and then sit on that stock and continue to divest yourself and make even more money. And that's what's attractive about a liquidity event with stock, or just selling your shares on the open market when the stock goes up or hanging on to them. Whatever you want to do, you've got optionality. Let's talk about founder configuration. In a lifestyle startup, you can be a solo founder just fine, especially with AI today. I'm a solo founder in multiple ventures. My YouTube channel, this channel itself, is a startup. I treat it like a startup, and I'm a solo founder. I have nobody on my cap table, nor do I want anybody on my cap table. Because I'm a lifestyle startup, I'm not going to raise, and nor am I going to exit. For the asset startup, you're going to need a team, a really tight team. Typically, you're looking at a core team of about 12, and then you're building up from there. Remember that magical number of 12. This kind of allows you to have 4 key VPs and then 3 reports or managers to each one of them, and then they've got their teams from there. Let's say you're the CEO and you have someone doing your operations, your finances, your HR, and then something like strategy or product. And then each of them have their teams that they're working with, and all the time as you're growing towards that stability, you're just focusing on that core 4 team, and then you're allowing them, empowering them to manage the rest of the organization. That's what great CEOs are going to do. As for unicorns, we don't know what that looks like. There is an acceleration in this world of AI where, who knows, companies might be decentralized autonomous organizations. That was one of the promises of blockchain and crypto that never really materialized. But with AI, is it possible? Do we even need CEOs? If we have an AI CEO, what if everybody trains the AI to be a CEO? All the investors say, this is what we need a CEO, and everybody votes, and this AI makes all the decisions. I don't know what that looks like, but I do know this. It's going to be a massive headache trying to navigate those waters into the future. You have to be very brave to do so. And like I said, many of you out there are probably these unicorn founders just waiting to blossom and bloom and come into your own. More power to you. I'd love to share the adventure with you. You have my support. Now, here are some final words of wisdom that I have for each one of these business models should you choose it. For the lifestyle startup, don't make your passion your job. My son has a passion for music, and we talked about whether that could be a job or not, and we worked through a plan, a startup plan. But I asked him this question: do you think Tiger Woods is passionate about golf? Think about that just for a moment. Tiger Woods, during his heyday, was at the top, the pinnacle of golf. Was he passionate about golf? I don't know. Maybe he was more passionate about winning and being at the top of his game, mastering a craft. Maybe he was more passionate about making money, but I'm not sure if he was passionate about golf. Let's use another athlete, Michael Jordan. He was passionate about playing baseball. He was a terrible baseball player. Was he passionate about basketball? You'd have to go ask him. But I can tell you this: I'm not passionate about YouTube. And I have plenty of other passions that I've tried to use to make money, and I've just ended up not enjoying my passion. In fact, the reason my YouTube channel has grown and it is viable in terms of an actual startup is because I treat it like a job. And in most jobs, you spend 80% of your time doing the stuff that you do not want to do, that's a massive headache, so you can get to the 20% that you really enjoy. So your lifestyle startup may have parts of it that you're passionate about, but you're going to have to work it just like everybody else. But it's that 20% that gives me the energy to do the 80%. Let me be even more transparent. Am I passionate about being a startup advisor? No, I am not. That might surprise you because that's what I do every day. But I am passionate about solving problems for founders, especially early stage founders. But I can't make a living doing that. Why? Because early stage founders don't have money. And I say this to all of you all the time. I want to give you as much value for free, better value than all the other stuff that you would pay for, or for a minimum exchange just to keep the lights on, so that later on you feel so guilty when you're sitting on your piles of money running your unicorn startups, you just decide to write me a check or you hire me as your advisor. That's the value exchange that we have going on here, and I like it and I'm passionate about it. So I take all these other types of jobs, advising different startups at different levels and advising other companies and partnering with startups.com as the creator in residence or entrepreneur in residence, whatever you want to call me, so I can get to the point where I see my passion. When I have a conversation with a founder and they just get it and they make it to that next level, man, does it ever supercharge my day. I think to myself, all the other stuff that I have to deal with during my regular work hours, this is worth it. Everything is worth it. I love it. And that's the reason I do what I'm doing right now, and I get super excited about it. For the asset startup, boring is better than bravery. We've got something going on in our culture where we tend to deify or glorify kind of the wrong things. Now, don't get me wrong. It is incredibly courageous to be an entrepreneur, especially if you're sacrificing working that job and getting that regular paycheck for variable income or letting it all out there, having those all-in moments as many entrepreneurs go through. And it is true that failure in the world of startups can be a productive thing. It can be appropriate. As I tell you, I failed 5 startups and I've learned every single way so that I can take those other moonshots. That every time I get to the plate, let's say we're playing baseball, if I want to hit a home run, I'm going to swing and miss a lot. If you're trying to build a startup that turns into an asset that you can sell, boring is going to be better. Continually pivoting and failing and trying again and having the world tell you, oh yeah, you're just on the grind, just go out and hustle. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. That's not going to be helpful. You can't get distracted by that. One of the most boring businesses that I have in my portfolio is a gas station. I'm partners in a gas station. It is in a small town. And wow, is it ever a boring business. It's the same thing day in, day out. There are no new challenges on a daily basis. You just go out there, do it, run your staff, and take care of all the paperwork, and you look at all the money start to flow in and your ownership start to increase in value, and eventually you work on selling the business. Startups are way more fun than doing an asset-based business, but it's kind of like real estate, like a house for sale. You just sit there and you wait. I saw an Alex Hormozi clip on YouTube. I believe he was on the Dave Ramsey show, and he was explaining that there's an entrepreneur with a business model that goes in and looks at what is the main street in a city and then measures out on a map like 30 miles or whatever it looks like, and then buys up all the real real estate in that radius and waits 20 to 30 years. That is a boring business model, to just own a chunk of land out there and wait for development to start to happen. But that is precisely the type of asset that sells and creates generational wealth. The boring businesses are the ones that other entrepreneurs aren't competing for, and you're flying under the radar so you can quietly go and build, and you're just that millionaire next door, and that's what you're looking for. Boring is going to be better. But if you need that adrenaline rush, then sure, think about the lifestyle startup or the unicorn startup. Because so many people ask me, Ed, should I do a startup? And this is my answer. No, only do a startup if you can't help yourself. It's in your blood. And I admit, I have that blood in my veins. There was a time in my life where I was totally unemployable and I had to be doing startups. That's not me anymore. I'm more of a portfolio pirate. I have a portfolio of ventures that range in lifestyle startups as well as asset startups. I am not the CEO of a startup trying to go unicorn. Not interested. I was in the past. If that's you, I want to encourage you. Don't give up your dream. Keep trying it until you decide to settle in. Because everything I've learned in those possible unicorns has made me a better advisor, has made me a better entrepreneur, and I now have the lifestyle that I want. I'm very fortunate, and I want all of you to think through your business models and reach the same conclusion so that 10, 20, 30 years later, you contact me and say, Ed, this was the best advice. I'm raising a family, or I've got all these ventures, or I'm sitting on a pile of real estate, or come join me on my island. I'll host you, bring your family, and let's have a party. I want to celebrate with you no matter where you end up. Just remember to think through it first, become that chief funding execution officer, take care of those details, and let's see how successful you can become. I look forward to hearing all about it. In the meantime, download CFXO in the comments or in the description. Watch the playlist that goes through all the different steps of CFXO, which starts with a personal assessment. Look forward to hearing what you think. Thanks for hanging out with me in this video. I'll see you in the next one.